Hi, I'm Cherry Sinyal. I'm the author of A Timeless Heartbeat and North Emblem, Book 1 of the Relic series. My debut novel, A Timeless Heartbeat, was published last January 18, 2016, and my book, North Emblem, was published last May 3, 2017. I'm currently working on my second book, which is the book 2 of the Relic series, aiming to publish it this year.
Hi, my name is Asaf Mer. I'm an author of historical fantasy novels. I write stories that mix up ancient Rome and urban fantasy in wrapping around noir detective kind of stories.
Hi, Joe. This is Connie Cockrell, and I'm an author and hiker and volunteer. And thank you so much for inviting me on Coffee Break.
Well, hey there. I'm Tiffany Appen, and I am an author as well as a musician, songwriter, and filmmaker slash actor.
Hello, my name is Sarah Berman. I am an author. I have written the Runespells series, the first book, Too Weird, and the second, Fluffy Bunny, are out and available for purchase.
Hey, this is Angela Hausman, and I write the series The Dark Web.
Hi, I'm Mary R. Waldring, also known as Crazy Ferret, Mad Woman, Wise Mama, Retiree, Granny, you know. Well, you also might know me as the writer and indie author of the sci-fantasy spec historical series Children of Stone.
If you had to use one line you have written to describe the artist you started out as, what would that line be?
There is this one of my favorite lines taken from chapter 22 of my book North Emblem, and it says, "Now and forever, I am and I shall be. It is the thought of my true destiny." I love this line. I strongly believe that embracing my passion in writing is what my soul wants me to be. I feel freedom and more independent as a woman, as a writer who can speak up her mind and follow her heart.
The tagline for the books is pretty good. It's stories of togas, daggers, and magic. Mixes my three favorite elements of ancient Rome, mystery novels, and fantasy. The other line would be probably the one I get quote the most is never practice magic when you're drunk. Which is probably a good idea.
If I had to use one line, I think I would use a line out of Tested, which is, will it hurt? And that is kind of how I felt when I first started writing in 2011. My daughter challenged me to participate in the National Novel Writing Month, and I had no idea how to start, so she gave me a book to read by Larry Brooks called Story Engineering, and with just 2 weeks to prepare, I read through the book. I got myself a plot outline and started writing November 1st and finished Nano that year. So that was very exciting for me to actually have a finished book, because I'd always wanted to write stories. I just didn't know how to go about doing it, and it turned out to be, well, not easy, of course, but simpler than I thought it would be. And then
Okay, well, it would totally be a line from Descent. And here it is. His heart palpitated with excitement as he made his way toward the cave's opening. He delighted in the view of the sun's rays in through the crevices and ended up spending that entire morning exploring, losing track of time in the process. 5 hours later, Hector ran home to find out that his parents had gone searching for him after he failed to show up for breakfast. Yeah, when I've been the artistic type, pretty much for as long as I can remember, and that happened quite a bit, especially if I was embarking on some sort of new project, or if I had some sort of new idea, or something like that. Yeah, I totally lost track of time quite a bit, especially like, during my kind of younger teenage years when I was in high school.
I felt weak and dizzy most of the time, and I often felt confused when people spoke to me. I'd been relying heavily on reading people's basic energies just to help me communicate with them, but I was still sure there were a lot of non sequiturs when I spoke to them. I was confused. I had no idea what I was doing. That's pretty much what it was. I had no clue. I loved words. I loved making words. I loved making stories, and I had no idea how.
I think that there's one line that really kind of encapsulates what I what I'm writing for, and it's when the FBI agent is talking to a group of preppers who are preparing for the electrical grid to go down. And the man that he's talking to is an electrical engineer, and he asks, why are you making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and things instead of doing something that's more in line with your training? And the prepper answers him, yeah, I'm an electrical engineer in a world without electricity. And I think that just kind of encapsulates who I am as a writer, because I tend to take the most serious topics and find bits of humor within these very serious topics.
Well, that was a question, Joe, but there isn't a line I've written about myself as a writer. I suppose something from my short story, Anna's Dream of Flying, will have to do. In this, Mr. Man, an ancient spirit, tells young Anna at the end of the story, when she asks him what she's to do, he says, meet kindred souls as you grow and tell them these stories. They will have stories to tell just like you do. One of them may even write about it one day. Well, I did write about it. The character in the story was based on tales of childhood of my best friend from college and grad school, told with a little bit of me thrown in. We all did the ghost hunting and the speculating that eventually became Children of Stone.
Near the end of a project, what is the emotion you find yourself more often feeling? And how long does it typically last?
Well, every time the completion of a project is nearing, I have the adrenaline rush, like I want to jump to finish it as quick as I can and feel relieved that finally the project is completed. Simply because I want to feel free to start another one. I have set a ruling for myself: never leave a project hanging or open ended. There should be a closure and it should be implemented before I can jump to another one. Considering that I am this kind of person who tends to get so excited when ideas pour in my head, I just can't wait to start. So I have to finish my current project so I can move on to the next. Setting a deadline is very important to me. It makes me move forward.
Um, Towards the end of the writing phase, I'm very excited. Everything is coming together, so I'm typing the words as fast as I can, trying to finish the book. And then come the interminable editing and book production. So towards the end, the launch of the project, I'm just, impatient of getting that book launched and out and ready.
Relief that it's finished finally, after all the writing and the editing and the revising and the formatting and getting it put up on all the sites. Really, I'm just sick of the book by then. So.
Oh, goodness. Well, after I wrote Descent, when I was finished writing it and I got to the very end, I felt very drained, but in a good way. Like, just very, very emotionally spent, but in a good way. Because in the book, and in a lot of my stories in general, there are very wide ranges of emotions. The characters kind of go through hell, and but I always try to find some sort of silver lining or some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Just because you have to have that. You know, if your characters are going to go through a lot of really dark times, you know, you like to feel like, okay, there's a glimmer of hope there at the end.
I would say that the biggest feeling I get, the biggest emotional reaction I get at the end of a project is stress. I'm always afraid that I'm going to blow it somehow. You know, like I can't hit the delete button and fix it. But yeah, I'm always just really stressed, really worried about nailing it, worried about making sure that everything makes sense. Yeah.
I feel a lot of relief. I feel a lot of accomplishment that I finished the project. I think the thing that I find is that I'm usually working on a couple of projects at the same time. So when I finish a project, it's more like, okay, I've got that one off my plate and I'm ready to go on and put more effort into the next project.
Well, I always feel incredible anxiety. I wonder if people will buy, read, and review my stories, because they are good ones. But the feeling doesn't ever go away. I just need to bury myself in the next project and try not to think about the marketing, or lack thereof, too much.
Dealing with critics, you've always found it better to what?
How do I deal with critics? Well, first I get mad, and then I get over analytical to see if I can determine why somebody would criticize me, and if there's merit or if it's just personal. If it's merit, I quietly implement their suggestions in my next story or revision. The personal stuff, I just don't even think about it too long.
Dealing with critics is always a difficult topic for most authors. You know, the first time you put something out there, you feel like you've sent your baby out into the wilderness, and it's very disconcerting when people say bad things. In my case, I come from an academic background. I've been a marketing professor for 20 years before I started writing. And so over the course of that 20 years, I've probably written and published maybe 100 or so papers, and there is nothing worse than peer critics, because they have a vested interest in keeping you down. So you either learn to deal with critics or you don't, and you're not very successful. So as a fiction writer, I have learned that the critics are much kinder than the academic critics were. So from that perspective, I have not run into a novel critic that has scared me off from writing. I'm always really happy to work with critics. I'm happy to take advice. Like most indie writers, I belong to a writers group, and we pretty seriously critique each other's work before it ever gets into print. So I find that extraordinarily helpful, even if they don't like it. It gives you some idea of how to get better, and it's productive criticism as opposed to an academics where it was just horrible. I remember I had a critic one time who said that the academic paper that I had sent was so bad that no one would ever publish it. And of course, you know, I did get it published in a very respectable journal. So, you know, people just have their own ideas about what's good and what's not good.
I found that it's always important to keep your humor, because really a lot of what is said is either very positive or, I mean, I've had some really odd reviews. I've had people tell me that they couldn't understand something because it contained both a police station and Norse gods, apparently totally missing the whole urban fantasy idea. people are weird. People have their own opinions. People have their own perspectives. Sometimes you just gotta chuckle about it and move on.
My experience with critics has basically been good. I've had some critiques done by other authors. We swap critiques, and a lot of times I'll have found that they give me ideas that it didn't occur to me before or while I was writing the work. So I found critiques very helpful so far. I'm sure one of these days I'll get one that I don't like, but it's always difficult to hear other people not badmouth so much, but not think that what you've written is good or appropriate, and that can be hurtful. But mostly, any critique I've gotten, even from my editors, have been positive and have helped me make the work better. So far positive, right?
Well, critics, they're a very interesting bunch. I've learned to not really let criticisms get to me. Because at the end of the day, if I'm liking what I do, and if for the most part, most of the people that are consuming what I do are enjoying it, then then that's what's important, because there's always going to be somebody out there saying something. And one thing that I have seen a lot of, not just authors, but artists do, and, because I see all your news, your news feeds and on Facebook and social media, so I've seen some of you do this. They tend to get, tend to take it very personally. And in a way, I totally get it, because a lot of what we do as artists, it comes from us. And, I think it's only human nature to want everybody to like us, or for everybody to absolutely just love what we do, but that's just not realistic. And what you have to do is, just take your time, not only doing a lot of marketing research, which I know that marketing, that's just not a very sexy word or sexy words for us artists, but you do have to do a lot of marketing research just to see what type of readers are going to really, really love what you do. Like with my book, Descent. People either love that it's a longer book, because it is, or they don't like that it's a longer book. And, I could either sit around and moan about the people that said that they didn't like that it was a longer book, or I could find people who actually enjoy longer books and, recommend the book to them.
Critics are useful. So once you get over the initial hurdle of ouch, if it's a bad thing, you just say thank you and learn what you can. So critics are useful.
Well, some friends will ask, is your book selling? And I just gave them a smile. Producing a book is not done overnight, but the fact that my book is already there, that's already a great reward for me. But also I know that from time to time, I have to deal with this kind of question, and I believe that the best way to handle it is, just give them a smile or ask, why do you want to know?
You were a mad scientist and could actually bring one of your characters to life. Who would that be, and why?
It would, I'm going to kind of cheat here, it would be the duo of Hugin and Moonin, because those two are so awesome. I want to meet those two in real life because they are excellent. They're kind of side-ish characters, but they are hilarious. So yeah, those are the two that I'd most like to meet.
Well, the first person I would say would be Nikolai. He's from the book Descent in the Birthright series, and he also kind of makes appearances in the subsequent books as well. But Nikolai pretty much kicks off the whole thing. and he is a Romani slave. He's in 1840s Wallachia. He and his younger brother, they escape their slave master's land. And from there, things kind of start to unravel. And one thing, and I think it would be just so fascinating just to hear Nikolai, in his own words, tell his story. Kind of like all my characters, I know what Nikolai looks like, I know what he sounds like, and I just think it would be, I know his speech patterns and everything, but I just think it would be just so, just cool to hear his story as a Romani growing up in 1840s Romanian territory. I just think that would be just really cool to, just to hear all that.
Probably the main character, Felix the Fox, is sort of a bigger and better version of myself, to say nothing about his magical abilities. I'd love to share a drink with him, even though I have a suspicion that he might want to get paid for his memoirs, as it is.
Definitely, it would be Elijah, the main protagonist of my novel North Emblem. I admired his courage and determination to live a normal life despite his blindness condition. He fought for a love he never imagined his entire life. Everything he knew about his life was temporary. The truth was, he was meant to be a leader of a tribe. And he has abilities passed on by his parents, allowing him or making him an extraordinary person. So he tried to conceal all these abilities to avoid hurting anyone. I like his character mainly because he's brave, courageous, and more importantly, kind-hearted person.
I think my character, Jean Hayes. Anybody who knows me knows that I base Jean on myself, and they say put a little of yourself in your work. Well, I certainly did with Jean. Jean is a middle-aged woman, and she is in a small Arizona town, and that's kind of like me. So I think Jean and I would, and her friend Karen in the story, would get along really well together. So,
Well, I try to get most of them. I love all of them. I would find it hard to prefer one. There are about a dozen in the series I'd want to hang out with, but not at the same time. I guess Mirai, because he's the main character. In many ways, though, it feels as if I've been hanging out with them in my dreams. They are just that real to me.
I think it would be Estella, who starts in the first book, Buried Ladies, by being kidnapped, and her neighbor thinks she's been murdered. I really like her. Her story weaves through all of the books. One of the things about my books is that I have a cast of characters. Some are only in one book. Usually the terrorists are only in one book, but the heroes are in various books. And so in one book they may be a main character, in the next book they may be a supporting character. So she's in all of my books in one form or another. And I like her because she's a strong woman, and yet she's still feminine. She works hard, she's proud of her profession, but she also loves her children desperately. And so I would like to know her better.
Evening the playing field, where you never had to be concerned about money, time, resources. Give us one way in which you would be the same artist you are right now, and one way in which you would be vastly different.
If I had all the money and all the time in the world, I think to a large extent my life would be exactly the same as it is right now. I'm very fortunate with my career. My children are all grown, so I have quite a bit of time to devote to my writing at this point. I think, if I had more money, the one thing I would do is use it to market my books, because I would just like to see more people reading my books and enjoying my books. I know one time I went to a lecture by Stephen King, and he talked about walking onto a plane and seeing someone reading one of his books and the thrill that that gave him, and being able to sit there and talk with her. I would like to be in that position where people are reading my books, and they find in them the things that I love about writing my characters.
I think the way that I would be the same kind of artist that I am now is that I would be writing the same stuff. I would probably be writing it about the same pace. The way that I would be significantly different is that I would participate more in some of the bigger marketing things that I sometimes push aside because of money and time and even energy, just, So I'd probably be a little more involved in marketing, but I think I'd write about the same way that I do now.
Well, the same way is probably keep writing the same stories. Like I said, these mix up the genres that I like the most, so I'll keep writing them. Where it will be vastly different, I'd probably have a lot more time to write a lot more stories.
The truth of the matter, either way, I believe I will still be the same artist as I am right now. Be in that evening plays or not, my passion in writing will pull me out, giving me a chance to share the stories of my character. Because I concealed my passion in writing for so many years, allowing myself to take a different career path after graduating college. And when finally I took the courage to work on this passion, I feel there's no stopping. Because I am doing something that I simply love. Being a resourceful person has its advantage. Thanks to the advancement of our technologies nowadays, access to information is within our reach. Being a writer is an everyday process of learning, and just trying to do my best and to contribute what I know.
I think I would be the same kind of author. I am fortunate enough that I am retired and I'm living on my retirement pay. So that makes it, well, not easy, because it's never easy to write, is it? But it's been fun. It's been something that I look forward to doing every day. So I think I would be the same kind of author that I am now.
Well, I'd still write, and I'd probably publish more stories, because in a heartbeat, with that money, I would hire an entire team of publicists and tech people. I despise my lackluster and inadequate promotion efforts. After that, maybe I'd get a gardener, cleaning personnel, decorated. For you, well,
My brain's never quiet. I'm always coming up with new ideas and just, new things to do. So I think I would still be, and I tend to like to be very productive. I like to produce things. So I think I would be the same in that sense. Now, how I would be different? Well, I would be cranking out even more stuff, I think, because I would have more time. And, and if, money and other things weren't like, a resource, it's like, yeah, I think I would be cranking things out a lot quicker, too, than I am now. So, yeah, I think that's how I would be different.
Thank you for listening. You can find me on my website, egretia.com, egretaa.com, or on Amazon, on Goodreads, etc. Just look for the book and you'll find me. Thank you.
All right. Well, I am on Facebook. Tiffany Appan. Just, do a search for me. Or you can do facebook.com/Tiffany Appan Music. And I'm also on Instagram. Again, Tiffany Appan Music. That's my Instagram name. And I have my own Facebook group called Antiquity and Illusion, and it's geared toward people who are into dark fantasy and just themes like that, things like castles and just dragons and all those themes, all those really, really cool fun themes, medieval themes. Hey, bring it. And also there's my series The Birthright also has a Facebook page. Just look up The Birthright series, you should find it. Also, I have a YouTube channel, Tiffany Appan. And if you're interested in early music and checking that out, just go to facebook.com/Wayward Companions, and we're also on Instagram as well and YouTube. So those are the places where you could find me. And thanks, Joe, for having me on. It was a lot of fun. And if you're definitely, those of you interested in dark romantic fantasy, check out my series, The Birthright. And once again, Joe, thank you so much. It was awesome being here. And I will, catch you all at a later time. All right. Bye.
And so thank you for allowing me to be on the show. And you can find me at ConniesRandomThoughts.com, where I have a free story every Friday and a blog post on Monday and a once a month recipe. And then on Facebook, I'm at Connie's Random Thoughts. On Twitter, I'm at Connie Cockrell, and on Instagram, at Connie Cockrell. So thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed talking with you, and have a great day. Bye.
You can find me on Facebook under Sarah Berman Author. You can find me on Twitter as Author Goddess. My blog is authorgoddess.blogspot.com. My website is authorgoddess.com. And my Patreon is Kalisara. That's Kalisara. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for having me.
You can find me all over the place. I'm everywhere. My website is angelahausman.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as Buried Ladies, which is the title of the first book. And I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, either as Angela Hausman or Buried Ladies, and I would really love to hear from some of you. Thanks so much for listening.
You can connect with me in my Twitter account, www.twitter.com/cherryciniel. Also my Facebook account, www.facebook.com/cherryciniel.author. And you can also get updates about my writing and my books in my blog site, www.cherryciniel.wordpress.com. And finally, thank you so much, GoIndieNow, for this wonderful opportunity you are giving me.
Thanks, Joe. Bye.